Hey everyone, a Nerd Named Mark here, doing something different. So I have all this stuff, this content I've been working on, and I'm just trying to chip away at a lot of stuff right now. And working full time and everything else, it's not easy to get all this stuff done. You know what I'm saying? And if you are familiar with the comic book, my podcast, I was doing the Into the MassiveVerse, series. Part 3 has been recorded. That is going to be coming out at the end of the week. But I wanted to talk, and if you've seen one of my previous episodes, about No One, or who is No One from that, which is in the Massiveverse, which was created by Kyle Higgins. This is another one of his, his comic, other than Radiant Black, because other writers we have like Ryan Parrott, Melissa Flores, Cherish Chan, stuff like that writing. So the reason why I'm talking about No One right now is because it technically is in the Massiverse, but it's very removed from that universe right now, 2 issues in. And so I was like, I could talk about this then separately because it has no, as of right now, no implications into the Massiverse. So I was like, okay, this can work. I can talk about this now then. It doesn't mess with my chronological order of covering everything else. And I like to be fully transparent. I have at my local comic shop, I have a pull list or subscription list, and literally it just says Massiveverse, and anything that's involving that they pull. So I actually got the first issue. I bought 2 covers when it came out, and then I was fortunate enough, and once again a huge shout out to Kyle Higgins, everyone over at Image and the Black Market Narrative. They sent me a box full of all the different covers. So while I am talking about this, and I was fortunate enough, like I said, to receive these covers and issues. They are going into my collection. Hopefully, I will get one signed by Kyle because then I can add it to my list of almost issue 1 of every comic he's written being signed by him. I need to go back and get a Gates of Gotham to get signed by him, actually. But I just like to be fully transparent. They did send me those. I did buy my own copies. I bought my own copies of Volume 2 as well. I buy these on my own. It does not change my opinion. If you have gone back, I have shown proof. I have been on this Massiveverse hype train before I even knew what the Massiveverse was, when it was just Radiant Black 2 years ago. So, who is No One? This is the reason why I want to talk about this on its own, is because this shit is crazy from a standpoint of ambition. Because not only do we have the comic, also, can we talk about the issue number 2 cover really quick? I love this Virgin variant. Like this, I couldn't say no to that. Um, so on top of the comic itself, we have a companion podcast that is actually the podcast that is being made in the comic by one of our reporters. And so I was like, okay, this is crazy. Like and it's Patton Oswalt does a voice, is on the podcast. So I'm just like, this is ridiculous. This is insane. I am all for this. And the reason why I want to talk about this so much on its own is because this is such a different genre, like type of comic in the Massiverse. Like Radiant Black, you got robots and aliens. You have the Dead Lucky, which is, you have the Dead Lucky trying to take down like this evil corporation. You have Rogue Sun, where the power's from a ring and there's like demons and stuff being fought. So, and then you have who is No One, that is literally like a true crime murder mystery, like who done it, like serial killer. And I'm like, okay, I'm I'm on board with this. Like you have me hooked. Let me let me read, let my eyes get in on looking at some of this, and then listening to the podcast has also been really good. And I'm just like, this is that immersion into a fictional world that not a lot, I don't think anyone's really doing it that way right now. Because yes, there are a lot of comics that have like podcasts, but it's like people just reviewing it and talking about it. This is the podcast that's actually in the comic, so it's a nice companion piece to add more depth to everything that's going on. So we got to talk about what No One is actually, or who is No One, which we don't know, by the way. Uh, it's kind of funny that the titled character isn't really fully featured in um in this book. Like no one is there a little bit in the beginning, and then towards like the end a little bit, and then also featured mainly in uh the the second issue. And so who no one is, they're kind of like this vigilante who keeps doing drops and doxing and like releasing this information on basically people who are doing wrong, you know? And as a vigilante, they're kind of, everyone's trying to figure out who it is. The cops are after this and that. And we find out that there's also a killer, a copycat killer on the loose. So this comic doesn't start off like holding your hand, here's this. It's like the world has already been established out of before this issue one even came out. So we do dialogue and this and that. We get more of the backstory of everything leading up to this, because Richard Rowe was this serial killer who was now caught and is in jail, and it's actually the son of the assistant like police chief in Pittsburgh, Ben Kern. So it's intriguing that his son is now in jail, but now there's a copycat, and we're already on our third copycat killer. So there's already two previous to this. So it's like the cool thing about already having an established world where it's not, you don't have to do as much world building, is you're thrown right into it. You're thrusted right into the story, and then from there you have to kind of get the context clues and through dialogue and a snap find out everything that led up to everything. And like I said, Ben Kern is one of our main characters. His son is in jail, and now we have a copycat killer. The killer is very distinguishable. They do 4 shots to the chest, but they leave 5 shell casings and a note. And I'm like, okay. And it starts off with one of the murders, and they literally say, I am the real Richard Rowe. So now it's like, okay, what in the hell? And it's kind of funny. Like I said, this is called, No One. Who is No One? But that's not the title character, because Ben Kern is one of the main characters. We also have this reporter, Julia Page. She is one of the main characters, and she's also the host of the podcast that you can actually listen to on Spotify and other podcasting platforms, which is great, which I think is really cool. So they're actually the main characters of this. So we see 2 sides of this like perspective. We have this investigative journalist who is starting this true crime murder mystery podcast going over everything that's going on. So we get their perspective of them trying to find out what's going on. Then we also get the perspective of the police investigating. And one of the cool things is there's a lot of inspirations drawn from different true crimes and murder mystery films. Ben goes to confront his son about this copycat and this and that. We're getting those like Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal Lecter vibes, where he's like, do you know anything about this? What do you like? Give me information about this copycat. And then, from the journalist side with Julia, we're learning like, one thing that I respect and I love about this is when I was in college, I graduated high school in 2004. I was going in for a business degree, my electives, and I had like, this and that. I was doing journalism. And 2004, 2005, journalism is a lot different than now. And even Julia Page brings up like, when I was in school learning this stuff, like we didn't know about these alternative forms of media like podcasts and videos and this and that. And I'm like the same way. I'm like, listen, I have a podcast now, but I learned like print, like writing, So I really kind of like that about the character, begrudgingly not wanting to do this, but then because she has respect and she's known, she was their top choice to do this. Also, takes place in Pittsburgh. I like that. There's even a scene where one of the cops that was brought on the scene to investigate one of the murders was mad because they were watching the Penguins game and they were tied in the 3rd period. And I'm like, listen, I wouldn't want to be drawn away from hockey either. As a Penguins fan and also a fan of Vegas Golden Knights, if it's 3rd period and it's tied, man, I would be mad if something took me away from that. I'm just saying, I would not be happy. But the cool thing about this is the air of mystery, and it gives you enough information to hook you in. I was worried because I was like, a true crime set in the MassiveVerse, but as of right now, 2 issues in, there isn't even any real like tie-ins to MassiveVerse, and I kind of like that because it could still be set in the same world, that we still get these isolated stories. And that's one of the one things about the Massiverse I love right now is the fact that we don't. You can read what you want. You can read just Radiant Black. You can read just Rogue Sun, The Dead Lucky, Infernal Girl read the three special issue because it wasn't, they were thick issues, and you can do like Radiant Pink. So it's, you could read what you want, and it's cool that they all have kind of their own isolated stories. But this one from True Crime, like I'm all for it. Like then, in my favorite part is at the end, and I'll show you guys really quick. Is at the end of every issue, like you have a QR code on the first issue that gives you actually the podcast for it, and then you get a little extra called Nopedia, which is a Wikipedia going over characters. So you have in the first issue, you get Aaron Kern, who was Richard Rowe, the first killer. And then actually in the first issue, it gives you a timeline of everything because this starts off in, I believe, March of 2023, but this goes all the way back to May 2022 for a timeline of events. So it kind of gives you that backstory without having to waste panels with flashbacks, and it's not usually a waste of panels. It's a poor wording choice, but you know what I mean. Like I'd rather have just a timeline broken down like that, easy to digest, than maybe spend 2 or 3 issues going over all this stuff, because this is only a 10 issue run. So it started in March, it's ending in December. And obviously the trade is going to be amazing. I don't know if they're going to do all. They're probably going to split in half, right? 5 issues per trade or one big trade. I don't know. I'm getting it regardless, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, issue 1 was very intriguing to me because it set everything up. But then even then, it ends with so the whole time Ben has another son who's off the wagon, using drugs and snap, Michael Kern, and so one of the interesting things is we see this dynamic of him and his sons. He has one son in jail, one son on the streets. His wife has died of cancer, I believe. And so he's kind of like on his own. He's like older. He's been doing this for 30 years. They're trying to get him to retire because everyone in the city is blaming Ben Kern because his son was the killer. And he's like, and now they're blaming him because there's copycats and he should have seen that the signs that his son was a killer. In the depth of his character, like he's got the Danny Glover I'm too old for this shit attitude, but he's still gung-ho. Like he even at one point gets attacked by the killer, and one of the few times we actually see no one actually saves him, and no one has the chance to stop this killer, but instead Ben gets grazed on the neck when he shoots at him, and no one chooses to save him. And this consequently leads to Michael Kern, his son, actually being another victim of this copycat killer at the end of volume 1. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, we just got introduced to this son. I want to know what his story, how is it, like, what this dynamic of the family, because now it's just Ben on his own. And it leads into everything in volume 2, which like I said before, I'm not going to be doing deep dive spoilers in this because I'm going to save that for when I do the MassiveVerse episodes. But everything about this is so intriguing to me. Like issue 2 goes more in depth of the police, the mayor's trying to, or the senator trying to start like a task force, more of Ben's outlook, more of him interacting with his son, trying to get information. We now see how the police and everyone are now being more thoughtful on what they say to the our journalist Julia, because she started the podcast in volume 1 or issue 1, so by issue 2 it's already out and people are already speculating, so now they're keeping stuff from her, so now they're showing how they're going to find their information. It's just straightforward true crime, and it's one of those things where it's like, you talk about it, you have to spoil it, and it's tough to do. But I will say this is definitely worth checking out if you've been reading the MassiveVerse stuff and you're kind of like just know this is not directly tying right now anyways, so it's definitely its own isolated like run so far. We're 2 issues in, but it's so good, it's so intriguing, and the companion podcast, like I said, is just like the icing on the cake. It's sweetening the pot a bit, makes it so good. I'm looking forward to everything else that's going to keep going with Who Is No One and No One issue 3. Obviously, it's on my pull list. If you are on the fence about it, check it out. I mean, it's already going back to what, like a third printing now, second or third printing. and it's crazy. So if you haven't already, go check it out. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this. As a true crime fan, I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts, this and that. So this is, it's nice to see a. Oh, if you think about it, so I'm listening to a true crime podcast and there's a comic book companion for it, But it's really good. I'm really enjoying it. Let me know in the comments below if you've checked it out. If not, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and pull us. What's the worst I can check out issue 1 and see if you like it. It's definitely worth a read. But that's it for the video. I thank you guys for watching. Recently hit 1,000 subscribers, so I thank every single one of you who checks out my channel. I look forward to continuing more content and making more, talking about more comic books, not just MassiveVerse. I have some other DC stuff and Marvel stuff I'm going to be talking about soon. So make sure you subscribe so you can see when those videos go live. I thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.